This video is brought to you by patreon.com/worsttake. Get access to exclusive live streams and Discord servers, on-screen shoutouts, and early access to some videos when you join now. Help make sure that we can continue to make content like this by supporting the Patreon. Links are in the description down below. My first impression with this Browns game this week is much better, especially in the first half. Let's talk about the guy that we've been talking about all week. He has the cases looming. His play was horrible last week, and it was a big topic of conversation, and that was Deshaun Watson. Now, was Deshaun Watson undeniable in this game? No, I don't think anybody's going to make an argument that Deshaun Watson was undeniably good in this game and that this game is why you bring him. No, he was pretty solid in this game. He made the plays that were there. I think he got let down a lot by his wide receivers in this one. Ultimately, he was 22 of 34 for 186. Given what the passing numbers look like for week one, that's actually on the higher side of passers for what the numbers were week one. So that's not as low of a number as we've been conditioned to think it was over the last few years. I think Deshaun Watson played well in this game. I think he did a good job avoiding taking sacks. I thought he was pretty spry on his feet while avoiding these sacks. I thought he made a couple of extracurricular plays. He did not force himself right or left as much as he did versus Dallas. He seemed like he had a good grasp of the game plan and a good grasp of what the Cleveland Browns wanted to accomplish, especially in that first half. And he looked more confident and looked a lot more like an NFL quarterback in this one. So honestly, we came into this with the big microscope on Deshaun Watson. And for now, I don't think we saw anything that would make us more concerned about Deshaun than what week one gave us. This was definitely a much better performance. I don't think anybody's going to debate if Deshaun Watson was better than this game. He was significantly better in this game than he was week one. What this doesn't do, though, is like make everything go back to normal with Deshaun. Like, he's still got to dig himself out of what was a putrid week one performance. And this was a good step in the right direction for Deshaun Watson, but it ain't over yet for him, right? He has to continue to stack games like this and games better than this going forward. But for a first step after what happened week one, I'm fine with it. This is a good first step here. Now, I mentioned the microscope that we had on Deshaun Watson in this game. During the course of this game, that microscope, that got turned from Deshaun Watson, and now we're looking over here, and we're like, hey, what's going on with Amari Cooper? Now, last week, I didn't want to say it because everybody else was talking about Deshaun Watson. Everybody else was talking about everything else going on with the offense, but I felt like Amari Cooper showed some signs of losing a step, right? The deep ball versus Dallas where he couldn't run underneath it. That concerned me. More so than the drop, right? If you just look at it, the drop's fine, but Amari Cooper should be able to accelerate and get underneath that football. He had enough time. It was in the air. He tracked it. Usually Amari Cooper's able to do that. A couple of times where Amari Cooper got open, wasn't able to maintain separation, wasn't able to hit that gear in the first week. This week, a lot of that tape was there, right? Where he's not really getting a ton of separation. At one point, I think the Browns swapped Jeudy to X just so they can get the separation that they wanted early in this game. And I think it's starting to become a thing. Now, again, it is worth noting, Browns played their first two games on natural grass fields. The field conditions for this game were not great. So maybe this is Amari Cooper not being able to get traction, and that's why he didn't play well. But that excuse is still not something that's there for everybody else. Amari Cooper had 8 targets in this game, 3 receptions, 11 yards, and he had, I think, 5 drops that people are going to say are drops, and then like 3 statistical drops in this game. Each one of them less acceptable than the last one. It was a horrible game from Amari Cooper, and it's the second one. And maybe the conditions had something to do with it. But Jeudy played under those same conditions. And I can't believe I'm saying this, thoroughly outplayed every other wide receiver on this team. Jeudy was great in this game. 5 receptions, 73 yards on 6 targets, had that great reception where Deshaun Watson threw right. Really did a great job of adjusting to Deshaun Watson when he did break the pocket and making plays for his quarterback, right? Deshaun Watson rolled right through to him. He got a toe tap in there late in the game. And in another situation where Deshaun Watson early in the game threw right, tipped the ball up, threw a 50-50 ball, and Jerry Jeudy fought through it. I think his one drop was he didn't maintain a catch through contact, but the separation was there. The burst is there. Jerry Jeudy looked very good in this game. I can't say the same for Elijah Moore. Like, his stat line is ultimately going to look fine. 6 receptions, 44 yards on 8 targets, but I feel like he let the team down a little bit here. Same thing with David Bell. Same thing with Amari Cooper. The only wide receiver I felt like played a sufficient game to a good game is Jerry Jeudy. Everybody else underwhelmed. I also thought the run game was here in a much better way. Now, the offensive line, and I'm not exaggerating, the offensive line alone might have wiped away 60 yards in rushing on holding calls. Like, they wiped away some really big runs for the Cleveland Browns on some pretty needless holding calls. But Jerome Ford continues to show that he should be more of a part of this offense. He played well last week, especially in the second half of that Dallas game. I know people called me crazy for saying it. I was dead on with that. I'm dead on with it here. 7 carries, 64 yards for Jerome Ford on 9.1 a carry. The dude should get more carries. He's pretty damn good. I told you, people's perception of him was a little bit skewed. Donta Foreman, 14 carries, 42 yards. With how he gets his carries, you're fine with that yards per carry number because he does get a ton of short yardage stuff, but you're fine with that, right? Overall, 100 yards in about 21 carries for both your running backs, and you're probably over 4.5 a carry with that. That's good running from both your running backs there. Let's talk about Deshaun Watson running the ball. I thought he did a good job running the ball here. Jameis Winston did a good job, a really good job, actually, on quarterback sneaks during this game. So really happy with what the Browns were able to do in the ground game. The big stinker on this team in the second half was the offensive line play. They were getting immediate pressure. I mean, pretty much the whole second half. They finally tamped down on some of that pressure late in the fourth quarter and were able to give Deshaun some clean pockets. And the passing game got productive again, but then they got a million holding penalties. It's really something has to be done here. I know people are going to blame it on the Browns having a new offensive line coach or something like that. I don't think that's a valid excuse for this offensive line because Ethan Posick's a veteran player. Wyatt Teller is a veteran player. The players committing these penalties are veteran offensive linemen who should be way better than getting the amount of penalties that the Browns had in this game. Like, if we just look at the penalty breakdown for the Cleveland Browns, the Browns had 13 penalties for 100 yards versus Jacksonville's 6 penalties for 52 yards. And I'm going to tell you something. This wasn't a badly refereed game. The Browns got 13 penalties, and they earned all 13 of them shits. That was like every time they got a penalty. Yep, yeah, they did that. Yeah. Like, one of them was a face mask by Donta Foreman, but there was a drive here where the Browns got themselves into like a 3rd and 36 off of just pure holds. They just kept holding after holding. And like every time they got a hold, they got like a 10, 15-yard run. And these holds weren't even close to where the run was. They got to clean that up. It killed them in the Dallas game. It almost killed them in this game. But fortunately, they got away with it. Let's talk about the defense. So actually, before I get to the defense, offense summary, Deshaun Watson, good first step. Let's see him continue to stack games like this here. And I want to see him do better than this, right? Going forward. But good first step for Deshaun Watson. I really don't blame Deshaun Watson for anything that went wrong on offense. A lot of his misses were on target and drops. Like, Amari Cooper dropped a lot of production. Deshaun would have easily been over 200 and had a touchdown or two if you get better performances from Amari Cooper, point blank, period. Amari Cooper was that bad in this game. And the penalties on the offensive line really unfortunate for this team because they had an opportunity to close this game out, make it much less interesting, but they penalized themselves out of it, and that was really the story of the whole second half. These penalties just came in droves in the second half. So got to clean up the penalties. You want to see Deshaun Watson continue to go on a good track. This was a good first step, but still the evaluation on him is continuing. And Wide receivers, I mean, this room is supposed to be a lot better than this. And this was a putrid game by them. And they got to be better than this. And I think it's been 2 putrid games. I don't think they played good against Dallas. I know people are trying to act like it was just Deshaun. It wasn't just Deshaun. Deshaun was awful in that game, unspeakably bad, but so were the wide receivers in that game. And it's no excuse to either of them. They are both responsible for their own failures. And I think the wide receiving core did not have a good bounce back game outside of Jeudy, who I think played really good. And that trade looking better and better each week the Browns have it here, because Jeudy was also the only guy who showed up in week 1. So Jeudy, good on you, man. You're proving a lot of people wrong right now. But I need Amari Cooper to wake up, because right now it does look like he's lost a step, and I'm concerned about that. The caveat there is he might have looked like he lost a step, but that's because he was playing in natural grass in rain conditions, and that might be the cause. We'll see. But I'm a little bit concerned about that with Coop. I'm not going to lie to you. Talk about the defense here. I think people made a big deal about the defense because it was time to be negative about the Browns, and you felt like you had to be negative about the whole team. You couldn't just be negative about the offense, right? But the truth is the Browns' week 1 performance was a bad showing by the offense, but the defense showed up. They only gave up 17 earned points. All the other points that the Browns gave up versus the Cowboys were because the offense gave up the ball in Cowboys territory. The Browns defense played great today. They gave up 13 points on 2 drives. Let me go to the play-by-play here to confirm that, right? So the Jacksonville Jaguars, they had 10 drives in this game. The Browns gave up scores on, I believe, 2 of them. One of them they held to a field goal on the goal line. The other one was a result of a big play that Greg Newsome gave up because he got long-armed by the rookie wide receiver for Jacksonville, and then they ran it in with Travis Etienne. So you don't think that's really replicatable. And then the other scoring drive was on a long drive that they were able to get there, but they got a lot of penalties that helped them through, and I believe they only got a field goal there. I'm fine with how the defense looked today. Again, the Jacksonville Jaguars aren't a nothing offense. They have a franchise quarterback in Trevor Lawrence, and this defense so far throughout the season has played 2 franchise quarterbacks. I think we need to remember. I think some of us want the defense to look like how it did against homeboy from Arizona every week. But when you play a franchise quarterback, they're going to be able to get a scoring drive off of you. Like, that's just going to happen. That's why those quarterbacks are paid so much money. Next week, when you play Daniel Jones, if you give up 25 points to the Giants offense, then we got something to be concerned about. But I thought the Browns defense was pretty good in this one. They made the plays that ended the game. Made you a little nervous, right? Were a little bit more leaky than you would want them to be at times. But overall, a really, really solid performance by the Browns defense. I thought the standouts defensively, Alex Wright had a really good game. I thought Miles, of course, he played solid. Jordan Hicks really stood out in this one. You can see that extra athleticism he brings to the linebacker position, being able to be pivotal to this team. JOK with the Guardian cap on, might have to keep it because he played excellent in this one. I thought Grant Delpit had himself a pretty solid day here too. Denzel Ward, I don't think he saw the field at the end. We're going to have to check and make sure that's not an injury situation going on with Denzel. But I thought the defense played fine. Thought you got a good one in there, but I can't skip past special teams this week. Usually I forget to bring up special teams, but boy, special teams really forced the issue this week. The special teams really brought it home for the Cleveland Browns in this one. From Dustin Hopkins, right? You get a couple field goals from Dustin Hopkins. He goes 3 for 3 in what were pretty bad conditions in Jacksonville, right? On and off rain, all that humidity. He goes 3 for 3 and makes his extra point, and also the long field goal of 53 yards there. Puts up 10 of the Browns' 18 points in this game. So you love to see that. Great stuff from Dustin Hopkins here. And then Corey Bojorquez with the play of the game here. An amazing punt at the end of this game to get the ball out to the 1-yard line. and then also the Browns defense capitalizing on that with Alex Wright getting the safety that basically ended the game for Jacksonville, or at least made this game out of reach here. Look, this isn't a game that's going to change people's opinions who were saltied on the team after week 1. This isn't enough. But not one performance was going to do that, right? One performance isn't going to change the needle on where people are with Deshaun Watson. One performance wasn't going to change the needle of how people feel about the Cleveland Browns. What the Cleveland Browns need to do is put together consecutive weeks of winning. They need to put together consecutive weeks of good quarterback play. They need to put together consecutive weeks of success in order to move the needle from how bad they looked like versus the Dallas Cowboys. So yes, this was a step in the right direction. You won the game, but it's one step in the right direction. You got to continue to make those steps, and you got some winnable games ahead of you if you're the Cleveland Browns. This was the one you needed to get to when you look at the games that you're playing. This was one of the ones that you really wanted to get because the AFC win matters a lot more than an NFC win. So you get the AFC win here. You're 1-1. You play the Giants next week. I believe after that you play the Commanders, and then somewhere in between there you play the Raiders, who just beat the Ravens, so they might not be a slouch either. And we saw what Gardner Minshew was able to do to this Browns defense last year, one of the few quarterbacks that were able to dice them up when they were healthy. So you can't sleep on any of the challenges ahead of you, but if you're the Cleveland Browns, you really got to take this 1 week at a time, because narratives about you, how people talk about you, how you feel as a fan, that's not going to change after one win or one game or one good performance, right? I know we're used to doing that in the social media era of doing our victory laps after 1 week and dunking on guys, and now it's a different world because we won this week. But the truth is, it's going to take multiple weeks. It's going to take multiple steps in the right direction, and you can't celebrate. Well, you can celebrate, obviously, it's a win, but you can't act like everything's a race. You just got to keep going in the right direction. This was a right step in the right direction, and you should be excited about it. Now let's move on to week 2 versus the New York Giants. Hopefully have a clean week of practice and maybe get your tackles back because it looks like you're going to need them with all the holding penalties that you're getting. It felt like that had something to do with it. But even then, it was the starters that were getting those holding calls. So clean up those holds. You keep the pocket clean. It looks like Deshaun could throw the football a little bit better. And we'll see where Deshaun goes as he gets more and more reps. But this was a step in the right direction for him. It was a step in the right direction for the offense. I thought Kevin Stefanski had an excellent game calling the game. Some excellent play calls, right? The decision to punt it in field goal range, right? They could have kicked the 58-yard field goal. They decided to punt it, made all the difference in the world, put the game away. And also the decision to go for it on 4th down and do a toss sweep instead of just doing a quarterback sneak led to another point situation for the Cleveland Browns. So good step in the right direction for the Browns offense. Good step for the Browns, period, to get this win. But they're not done yet. It's only week 2. 1 week at a time. Let's focus now on the New York Giants and what the Browns can do to continue to go in the right direction, because this is more like it.